Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. This is your Thanksgiving morning update here at 1 degree outside. Matt Noyes, wonderful to be with you. We'll provide some more updates over the course of the day, and I may not be dressed in a suit all day because we're doing Thanksgiving as well, but we want to make sure you get the latest information. A reminder, day like today, our app is worth its weight in gold. You're going to be able to track the live radar, watch the rain snow line, see the hourly forecast for any flipping and flopping between rain and snow or when it's going to let up and all that. See the radar forecast, and the 14-day. Just download Noyes 1 degree outside weather off the App Store or Google Play. All right, radar over the course of the morning has showed an expansion of snow in blue, a mix in pink, which mostly has been freezing rain for some slick spots in north central and northwestern Massachusetts, and plain rain in green. All of this will be expanding to the north and east across New England as the storm center takes shape. By the way, rest of the country does fairly well today overall for travel, and Logan Airport really not heavily impacted. You're going to have the rain and the wind at Logan. There'll be no snow, no ice, no concerns with that. If you are traveling today across the remainder of the nation, the big cold spot is across the northern tier of the U.S. with high temperatures in the teens and single digits across the far northern tier. And then, of course, the warmest stuff is found down in the Sunshine State of Florida, where there'll be a few thunderstorms that pop up today. Our high temperatures in the 30s with elevation-dependent snow. We told you about this in our Insights video yesterday, but I'll dive into it again in a minute. Farther south you go, the milder it is, and the more you see just rain that comes down and goes down the drain. So in terms of the kind of breakdown on the radar forecast, again, I'll refer you to our app for the kind of specifics, because that updates every hour for you. If you go to the past plus future mode in the radar tab on the app, but nonetheless, you can see where the snow is expected to continue all the way through midday up and down the Green Mountains, some of the northwest corner of Mass. We've peeled back on the amounts in the high terrain of northwest Worcester County. You've already made a change to some freezing rain this morning, so your snow amounts will be limited. The farther north you go, no change to the expectation that we stay as rain around Manchester and Concord for a while, but then as the precipitation gets heavier, it cools the atmosphere during the early to mid-afternoon. You start to see that snow line collapsing south a bit, and then everything kind of peels away. So still expecting between about 4 and 6 p.m., the intensity really backs off in southern New England, and then between 6 and 9 p.m., that intensity backs off for a lot of the rest of us. The farther northeast you are, particularly in central and northern Maine and the mountains of Maine, the more it snows into the overnight. You're kind of just hunkered down. So in terms of the snow forecast, again, really it's northwest Worcester County that's the one area that we had to make a change in and peel things back around Ashburnham and Winchendon, just because you made the change way earlier going over to freezing rain rather than getting a burst. You might get another coating to an inch on the tail end, and that'd be about it. You get into western Massachusetts, and we're still expecting to find that purple 8 to 12-inch snowfall amounts. When you get into the high terrain, in fact, the deeper purple that you see, especially as we come into the southern greens, this is where you're talking about more than a foot, and there may be more like 18 inches of snow where you see some of the pinks. And you can see the tremendous elevation dependency here. If you're in a valley, you've got way less. That includes I-91. That includes Keene, New Hampshire, but the hills just northeast of Keene, like Washington, which always do well on snow, will do well this time. 8 to 12 for you. You may get 12 or more when you get to Sunapee. The farther north that we go, all of the mountains in Vermont doing phenomenally well with elevation. Mostly it's above 1,000 feet. When you get across Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, that you get the heavier snow amounts. It'll be the 8 to 12 plus. Under 1,000 feet, you get progressively less. In southern New England, western Mass, it's more like 1,500 feet that's cut off. But you can see that 1,000-foot level in the Northern Lakes region, coming out of Lake Winnipesaukee to the north and west and through Plymouth. If you're down in the valley along 93, of course, 93 changes elevation. You're in and out of the snow in terms of the heavier stuff. Same thing on 89, right? When you get into the high terrain, you've obviously got the winter storm driving conditions over the course of the day. Today, when you're down in the lower terrain, you start to outrun that a little bit, and it gets just kind of wet and slushy. Same thing up I-91 for that matter, but you come into the hills either side of the mountains either side, and your amounts change pretty significantly. That's the case, too, as you make your way into the presidentials and the Mount Washington Valley versus, let's say, you get up north of Jackson. There's a huge difference there, right? Mount Washington Valley may end up with only a couple of inches, and then the farther north you go, you're talking about what's going to be probably on the order of 1.5 feet. Champlain Valley is too low in elevation to get much in the way of snow. It's mostly rain for us. And as I mentioned yesterday, and Danielle mentioned yesterday, it very much is an elevation event, even in the north country of New England. We've upped the amounts a little bit when you get in some of the high terrain of Coos County. The lower terrain of Coos County, though, still not getting a lot. And when you get up by Newport or Derby, for example, you're just outside the hilly terrain or just outside the mountains, so you're not really getting as much. Same thing when you come into the mountains of Maine, you get the higher amounts, but look at that, nothing at the coastal plain. When you get to the Maine Turnpike, mostly it's once you start getting north of Gray through Lewiston, Augusta, and then up through Waterville. That's where you're going to find some of your kind of wintry, slushy conditions develop out on the road, and treatments will be needed. You can see that uptick in amounts the farther north that you go toward Millinocket. Katahdin does well, and then the farther north into Maine you go, it's mostly snow that comes down for a lot of us. There is still some elevation dependency, though, as to how fluffy or how wet that snow is. For everybody else who rains, it's going to be on the order of a ½ inch to 1 inch of rain that comes through for us here over the course of this storm. And again, kind of wraps up this evening. We're not worried about a widespread freeze tonight in southern New England where it rains because the temperature is slow enough to come down below freezing and the wind is going to be gusty enough. It should dry the roadways after the rain stops in most spots. Obviously different where we see the winter storm conditions. We get into Saturday, some snow showers against the western slopes of the Greens. Sunday, we know a lot of you are probably traveling. No huge issues. There may be a little bit of light snow around Cincinnati, so that could cause a problem there. Rest of the country, for the most part, does well if you're going to be traveling on Sunday. We do fairly well here at home. We just settle into what's going to be a cool pattern, and that'll continue into the early part of next week as the storm goes by just off the coast. In terms of your wind gusts for today, you can see on the Cape, we gust out of the south to 40 miles per hour for a time as we get to the afternoon. Boston is an east wind and a southerly wind for a time, and then eventually a northerly and finally a northwesterly wind. We do everything from Boston up the North Shore. Why? Because look at this. The storm center comes right across southern New England and then makes its way along the coast of Maine. So the gustiest time at the coast of Maine is we get towards 6, 7 o'clock, and it does blow for a while going into the overnight. This is what I mean about the rest of us. You find that wind continuing for the overnight, so it will dry the roadways. It's almost like a natural blow dryer out on the roads, and with low temperatures that do end up near freezing, we just think it's going to dry before it freezes up. Obviously, again, very different the farther north you go where you get the snow that comes down. Highs tomorrow. This has been a marginally cold air mass for snow in the first place, so it's not hard to get back up to 40, 45 degrees, 30s in some of the north. Friday night, we're talking about lows that will go down to the teens where there's snow on the ground, and other than that, you're talking about lows in the 20s. Saturday looks pretty good for us here, about 40 to 45, but again, western slopes of the Green Mountains will find accumulating bursts of snow during Saturday night. That's just blowing off of the Great Lakes and Lake Ontario, getting a little bit of boost from the mountains as it comes in, and that may happen particularly in the northern Greens as we get into Sunday. Most of us, it just feels like winter for the upcoming weekend, and that kind of air will last into early next week. Notice Monday still in the 30s and feeling like winter. And with the winter gear, wintry weather coming on, if you want winter gear, you can go to swag.onedegreeoutside.com. We will update you over the course of the day from time to time in between Thanksgiving dinner, but we want to make sure we keep you updated on what's going on with the rain snow line. But again, follow it on the app. Noyes' 1 Degree Outside Weather. It's the best way to do it, and it's totally free. Happy Thanksgiving again.